Hi, this is Rick. We're going to talk about Chapter 5, which is actually on looping. And this is part 1 of 2, so you're going to have to watch the second part next week. Here's a guy that you may know that knows a lot about looping.
One thing that computers are really good at is repeating commands. As a person, you'd get really bored if you had to do the same thing lots of times in a row. But a computer can do the same thing millions or even billions of times and not get bored and be able to carry that out really well. So for example, if I wanted to wish everyone on Facebook a happy birthday by sending them an email, it might take me more than a century to actually write out all of those emails to everyone. But with just a few lines of code, I can have a system send an email to everyone on Facebook wishing them a happy birthday. So that's what loops are and why they're valuable and something that computers can do very well.
Remember that this presentation doesn't replace your book. It just kind of introduces your book. You still need the book for all the details. There are a lot of examples in the book that may help you through the material, and this kind of works along with it. In fact, the page numbers are in the upper right-hand corner in case you need to refer to that book. We're going to talk about several things in this chapter. So let's get started. We're going to introduce the repetition structure. A repetition structure causes a statement or a set of statements to execute over and over again. Now, there are a lot of different ones. We're going to talk about 3 of them. We're going to talk about the while do loop, which is actually a loop that runs while a condition is true. So we state the condition, and then we have a number of statements that are going to run as long as that condition is true. The do while loop actually runs once and then tests the condition, which is a little bit different than the while do loop. So that's a do while loop. The third one is called a do until loop, and it's going to run until a condition is either false or that it's true. So we're going to have to carefully construct that one. That one is not used very much in this class. Remember that if you make a mistake in a loop, you could be creating an infinite loop, which is a way of making sure that the computer just never stops. So you always want to provide a way out, and we'll show you how to do that. So let's take a look at the condition control loops, and we'll start with the while do loop. Now, while do loop is also called a pretest because we're going to test, and then we're going to do some things if that statement is true. So we're going to have our while condition, and we're going to test it, and if that condition is true, then we're going to do some statements. And once those statements have run, we're going to go back and start again. So the actual loop runs until the condition is no longer true. This is a flowchart of a while do loop, which is a pretest loop. It tests the condition and then runs. It runs until the condition is no longer true. So now it's your turn. We're going to say that A equals 2 and B equals 4. And we're going to write a loop then says while A is less than B, do A equals A plus 1, and end the while loop. And then we're going to print what A and B are at the end. So let's run this. While A, which is 2, is less than 4, and that's true, that's correct, so we're going to do A equals A plus 1. So A is 2, A plus 1 is 3, so now A is 3. We hit the end while and we go back up to the while statement. While A, which is 3, is less than 4, which is B, okay, good. We're going to do this statement again. So then A equals A plus 1, which is 3 plus 1 is 4. So now A equals 4. Hit the end while, go back up. While 4 is less than 4. Well, that's not true. So now we stop the loop. We go down to print A and B. A is now 4, and B was 4. It always stayed 4. So our answer would be, print A and B would be 4, comma 4. And that's how loops work. It continually loops until the condition is no longer true. Let's go over some vocabulary. Vocabulary is really important when we talk about loops, so we're talking about the same thing and referring to the same thing. The first thing is the condition. There's our condition in this little loop. You notice that it comes down and we say the rep equals 1, and then we say is rep less than 5. If it is, then we're going to print a warning, and we're going to then increment the rep equals rep plus 1, kind of like we did in that last example loop. This is our loop body. Those statements are going to run if the condition is true. Let's take a look at some more vocabulary. This is our variable called the loop control variable, and you'll notice it's repeated 3 times. So we initialize it, and then we've got it used in the condition, and then we increment it up by 1. And we can also increment it down by 1 if we were going to go in that direction, but the idea is that this is called the loop control variable. This is called a sentinel value. We change that to change the number of warnings that we're going to print. This is called the counter, and it's what increments or raises the level of the rep variable each time. And as I said, again, we could make this a minus if we were going to do a countdown. While using a while do loop, we use a vocabulary like this. The loop control variable, and there's your definition. Sentinel value. Loop body. Those are the biggies. Once the body has been entered, the entire loop body must be run. So you can't just run half of it and then quit. You have to have an exit from the structure, but it can only be at the condition where the comparison is. So let's take a look at this one. See if you can figure out what this one does. First of all, how many times does it run? If you said 4, you got it right. So let's just do our vocabulary lesson here. There's our condition. Can you locate the loop body? It's right there. And what's the name of the loop control variable? Right there. How about the sentinel value? Right there. And the counter or incrementer? Right there. So let's do some desk checking, and what we want to do is take a look at this thing. When we have a lot of complex variables, we use what is called an iteration chart. And so this iteration chart allows us to put numbers in those blocks as the loop runs. Here's our iteration table, and this is our loop. We have a equals 2, b equals 4, c equals 5, and then we have our condition while a is less than b, and here's our do statement. That's our a equals a plus 1, and here's our c equals c plus 2. So those are our 2 statements that we're going to run. There's our end while. And once that's all done, we're going to print out a, b, and c. So let's actually do this one. So on iteration 0, in other words, before it actually runs, we're going to actually put our variables in the table. So you notice a went in 2, and b went in 4, and c went in 5. Now we're going to go down to the while statement and run it. So is a less than b? Let's see. A is 2 less than 4. Yep. Okay, we're going to run. So now it says a equals a plus 1. So a equals a plus 1. And c equals c plus 2, so that would be 7. And b doesn't do anything, so we're going to keep that the same. We hit the end while. We go back up and test the loop again, test the condition again. And we say, is a less than b? So is 3 less than 4? Yep, okay. So now we are going to run the statements. A equals a plus 1, which is 4, and c equals c plus 2, which is 9, and 4 stays the same, or b stays the same. Hit that end while, go back up, and test it again. So, is, oh, no, wait a minute, is 4 less than 4? No, it isn't. So we're done. So we go to the end while, and we print A, B, and C. So A, B, and C would print out as 4, 4, 9. Okay? That's how that works. Okay, now it's your turn. See if you can do this one. Stop the tape. And then when we come back, I'll go ahead and reveal the answers. Okay, in our iteration 0, we said a equals 1, b equals 2, and c equals 5. So there's our condition as long as a is less than c. So is a less than c? Yeah, a is 1 and c is 5. Okay, so then we're going to do a equals a plus 1. And we will do b equals b plus c. So that's 7. Okay, and anything happen to c? Nope, c stays the same. We hit the end while, we go back up to a less than c, the while statement, the condition. And so we say a, which is, okay, so we're a less than c, so I did that a little early, so sorry. But we said a less than c, which 2 was less than 5. And so we said a equals a plus 1, which is 3, b equals b plus c, which is 12. And c doesn't change, so that stays at 5. We hit the end while, go back up to the while statement, a less than c is A less than C, 3 less than 5. Yep, okay, so now we're going to run it again. So A equals A plus 1, which is 4, and B equals B plus C, which is 17, and C doesn't change. Okay, we needed to run it again. Let's go back up. While A is less than C, is A less than C? Yep, A is less than C. So at that point, you finish it. So you figure out what A, B, and C should come out to be. Okay, here's another one that's your turn. Turn to page 224 and do questions 1 through 5. Let's trace this flowchart down. So we are actually on page 186 of your book, so we're going to start, and you'll notice that we have declared the string, which is letters, the string variable called keep going, equal to y. All right, so we then come down and we say if, and there's that diamond that we were talking about, if keep going is identical to y, that those two equals it says is identical to, then we're going to run a little module called show commission, and then it's going to display, do you want to calculate another? Display commission, and then it's going to say enter y for yes. Then it'll take what we enter, like a y, and input that into the keep going variable. Then it comes back around to the top and says, if keep going is identical to y, then run it again. So this will run as long as we keep saying y. What happens when we say n or anything else besides a y? It's going to come around to the condition and say keep going identical to y. It's false, drops through, and the program ends. Now, when we talk about a do-while loop, it's a post-test. We've been talking about things that actually run once after the condition. Now we're going to see that they run once before the condition. So this is a post-test. So we're going to do some things, and then we're going to test our condition. And if it's true, then we're going to run it again. So it runs once and then tests the condition. But it continues to run until the condition is no longer true. So we're going to get at least one run out of this. So a do-while loop is a post-test. See where the test is at the bottom? Here's an example of one. Same thing as we had in the beginning. Here's our flow chart. We start, we declare our string, and then we say, if we're just going to go down and start running show commission module. We go through the same statements. We input our commission, enter yes for yes. So if we want to continue, we enter a y, and it inputs into keep going, and then it tests it. So it's going to run it at least once. If it's yes, then it goes back up and runs the show commission module one more time. Comes down and tests it again before it runs it again. Now, we also said there was a do until loop. And a do until loop iterates until a condition is true, but not all languages support this kind of loop. That's why we're really not using it extensively here. Now, just before we go, I want to tell you one other thing. There are two basic kinds of loops. Now, we've said that there was a while do and a do while and a do until. So those still stand. Those are types, but there's another way of looking at it, and one of them is called a definite loop. A definite loop is one that executes a predetermined number of times. So if we knew that we had to create 100 labels, it would run 100 times. Whereas if we were to change something about every student at FSCJ, wow, that would be really tough because it varies from hour to hour. So that would be called an indefinite loop. We wouldn't know how many times the loop's going to run, but it would execute the number of records that were there. So we would use what is called an EOF, or an end of file. So it would run until it ran out of records or we manually interrupted it. Remember, anytime you need help, just come and see me in my office.